We need to talk about the Odyssey, because people are not only calling it the best Christopher Nolan film, but the best film ever made. And in this video, I'll tell you everything that happens in it, what it was really about, and what that shocking twist ending really means, because a lot of people are getting that one wrong. I'll answer questions you're left with, like how much of what we see and hear about was real? Did Odysseus really run into gods and monsters, or was something else going on? Because Christopher Nolan is really clever about how he plays with anything magical or supernatural in his films, and there is a crazy twist to this one that changes everything. I've got it all covered, and I'll give you my review and who I thought was the best actor in this film at the end. If you're new here, I'm MadMorph, and this is my movie club. No AI is used in the writing of this script or the making of this video, so like and subscribe for more human-made content. And if you're interested in listening to the story of the Odyssey read to you by me for free, I have a podcast called Down to Sleep. I've just started reading the Odyssey over there, so go and check that out on Spotify and everywhere you get podcasts. You can find the link in the description or go to downtosleeppodcast.com. This is the Odyssey explained. Imagine you're a king summoned away to fight a war, and it has now been 20 years since you left. While you are traveling home trying to survive against cyclops, sirens, and witches, there are sleazy suitors feasting in your capital and trying to marry your queen. She is stalling as best as she can, but 20 years is a long time, and time is running out. So the son that you hardly know tries to set out to find you, the truth of what happened to you, or evidence of the queen Penelope, who says she doesn't want to hear it. While Odysseus' son Telemachus, played by Tom Spider-Man Holland, tells that he wants the bard to play the song to remind them all of whose wine they're drinking. Here's what you need to know about what's going on in Ithica. All of these suitors are in the palace, including a man called Antinous, played by Robert Pattinson. They're here waiting for Queen Penelope to finally choose one of them to marry. While she stalls, they're feasting in the palace every night and eating her out of house and home because of Zeus's Law. Zeus's Law is central to this story, and it's a sacred law between host and guest that means a traveler could expect food, shelter, and comfort. A host must take care of them, and a guest must be respectful. It's a bit like the treat one as you would like to be treated rule, and they enforce it by saying anyone could be a god in disguise. Telemachus either wants to claim the throne or find his father, Antinous wants to marry Penelope, and Eumaeus is a blind servant who is loyal to Odysseus. Argus, but Calypso, who is a minor goddess played by Charlize Theron, a major goddess, is his companion in this desert and encourages him to stay. She is keeping Odysseus here and feeding him lotus flowers that make him forget. But now she tells him to stop eating them and tell her what he remembers, so he does. And we get the story from Odysseus as we flash back to the story of the war with Troy. Odysseus is standing over Sinon's grave, the warrior from the beginning, and he holds the lottery stick that belonged to them, that brought them to this war. We see Odysseus tell his men they've spent 10 years on the beach and it's time to go home. Eurylochus, played by Himesh Patel, asks if they have enough provisions, to which Odysseus says, "We have taken enough from Troy. Another couple of stops won't kill us." Oh, how wrong he was. Once they set sail, he also changes course, saying that he's followed Agamemnon for long enough. While Agamemnon and his men row west, Odysseus raises his sails and lets the wind carry them south. And again, despite Eurylochus saying this is a risk, Odysseus says, with a bit of luck, we'll see some of the world and still be back before Agamemnon. The reason he actually does this becomes much clearer later on. Fun troll, but that him and his men have been changed by their time at war. The next island they stop at, they follow a sheep into a cave hoping to find its flock, and they find big giant bags of cheese grommet on the wall. They start a fire and wait for the owner, looking to enact the law of Zeus and to trade with them. But as they do, the rest of the flock come in, followed by a giant cyclops who pulls a giant rock over the entrance of the cave, locking the men inside. Fun fact, this was all shot in an actual cave called Nestor's Cave in Greece, and a giant puppet was built to stand in for the cyclops, with an actual actor then playing the part of the giant in the film. The Cyclops grabs and eats a couple of men from the darkness and then curls up by the fire and goes to sleep. They consider killing it, but Odysseus realizes just in time if they do that, they'll be stuck inside the cave forever. So they make a plan to just make a run for it when the Cyclops lets his flock out in the morning. But when they make a run for it in the morning, the Cyclops is like, "I spy with my giant eye you trying to escape," and he stomps on one and eats another one. And as he closes the rock back up, Odysseus runs back in to be with his men, and they make a new plan. The Cyclops is sleeping, and the men sneak out at night, wipe out the soldiers nearby, and make a run for the gate to open it from the inside. This lets their boss man, Agamemnon, aura farm his way inside like an ancient Darth Vader hallway scene as his men pour in and win the war. The story stops there for now as we cut back to Odysseus telling his tale to Calypso. He says that his men became convinced that he was cursed by Poseidon. We watch them land again looking for food as they head into the woods and find a creepy giant child who is as tall as them. Eurylochus even says, if that's a child, what about its parents? And then the child starts to scream like it's on a long-haul flight whilst you're trying to sleep, and the adults come out of the fog. The bad news is that they are man-eating giants, and they start slaying the men who run back to the ship whilst trying to fight them. In the book, they destroy 11 of Odysseus's 12 ships by throwing big rocks down from a cliff, with only Odysseus and his men escaping. In this tale, they destroy the other 2 ships that were with Odysseus, and only him and his men escape. And while the rest of his men are being killed, Odysseus sees Athena again and has flashbacks to seeing her in Troy. It's a pretty cool fight scene and escape scene. I can't tell if I hate or love the armor that these giants are wearing. It kind of looks like something out of a cheap TV production. It's a bit bland, but it's also kind of memorable for some weird reason. What do you think of their costume design? Let me know in a comment. The journey continues. Leave them. There is a really genius reason why Nolan did it like this, and I'll explain that properly at the end. For now, Sinon tells Odysseus that his father died in poverty, revealing that Antinous cheated him and never actually paid his family. He tells Odysseus that once he's home, he must head into the west to give sacrifice for the men that they failed to bury, and requests that Odysseus gives the lottery stick, the shame, back to Antinous. The spirit of Agamemnon speaks next, revealing that he was welcomed home by his wife, but then she murdered him that very night for sacrificing their child. He warns Odysseus to not walk in the front door expecting garlands and praise, but to be cautious and to assess. Tiresias can see the future, and he warns Odysseus of the sirens. He also warns him that when he comes to a whirlpool, if he tries to sail through it, they will all die. And that the other direction leads to Scylla, where only 6 of his men will die. And Tiresias is just dropping prophecies like a Luke Goblin being spanked, because he also tells Odysseus that when his men eat the sun god Apollo's cattle, they'll be killed by Zeus. To which Odysseus says, I can still save them from the gods. And Tiresias says, but not from themselves. As the spirits of the unburied men show up and chase them all back to their ship. Back in the present, Odysseus starts to wonder where his crew is and if Calypso did something to them. To which Calypso is like, shut up and eat some more lotus flowers and go to sleep. Tomorrow you'll remember everything. Back in Ithaca, Antinous makes his play for Penelope. He repeats the lie that he tried to go with Odysseus as a boy and was told to stay behind. And Penelope's serving girl, played by Mia Goth, is a traitor, and she tells Antinous that Telemachus has gone to sea, so the suitors plan to go after him and kill him. Back on Calypso's shore, she's trying to convince Odysseus to remember, and he's saying, I don't need to know the truth, I'm happy here with you. But his actions say otherwise, as he's gathering parts of his old ship and making a raft. So he acquiesces and he tells the story of the sirens to Calypso. In mythology, the sirens are hybrid bird women who live on a rock in the sea, and they use their voices to lure passing sailors to their death. It's a bit like me luring you to sleep on my podcast Down to Sleep, which is on Spotify and everywhere you get podcasts for free. But in this instance, because Odysseus was warned by Circe, it will put you in the shoes of the sailors on that ship. It essentially mimics the effect of the siren's song, because you find yourself as a viewer reaching for it and wanting to hear it, and you can't. Things quickly go from bad to worse for the men as they now approach the monstrous whirlpool that Odysseus was warned about, but the men don't know. He tries to convince them to sail for the whirlpool and to steer out of it, but they don't listen to him and opt to sail through the strait. Remember, Odysseus was warned, if you go into the whirlpool, you will all die. If you go the other way, Scylla is waiting and only 6 of you will die. The question is, was Odysseus really hoping that they could outsail this giant whirlpool? Or was this brilliant reverse psychology knowing if he suggested the whirlpool that his men would no longer listen to him and go the other way, saving the majority of them even though none of them care for him anymore? They sail into the narrow channel where Scylla, a sea monster with 6 long necks and 12 tentacles, waits and feeds on 6 of them. They are plucked from the ship, and the design for Scylla is pretty interesting but a lot less horrifying than it could have been. It might also be that this is where while Odysseus washed up on Calypso's shore. This is where he's been for the last 7 years, eating lotus flowers that make him forget. Calypso has fallen in love with him. In the book, Calypso keeps him there against his will. She offers him immortality and eternal youth to stay. But Odysseus just cries and pines for Penelope and spends 7 years wanting to go home. And Calypso only lets him go because Athena literally sends Hermes to tell her to do so. In this adaptation, she's a little bit more redeemable, a little bit softer, a bit of a lover girl, and the gods are less involved. Calypso just loves him and says that she knew he wasn't ready to go home yet. He says, "I am now," so she gives him the pin of Penelope's, and this jogs his memory, and she tells him to give himself to Poseidon and to go home. Odysseus straps himself to his raft, and he floats out into the sea where he is swallowed by the waves. While he experiences flashbacks to Troy, which represent him facing his trauma and guilt, before finally washing up on the shores of his home, Ithica, with Athena sat waiting. Odysseus goes to Emmaus, the blind servant, who's been attacked by the suitors. But he's pretending not to be Odysseus. Just like in the books, he pretends to be a beggar. Remember how Agamemnon told him, "Don't expect garlands and assess." This is what he's doing. His servant tells him Telemachus has gone to Pylos and that the suitors are going there to try to kill him. So even though he just got home, Odysseus sails out to try to save his son. Telemachus is going to the temple of Athena, where the suitors are pretending to be priests. They kill Mentor with poison, and luckily Odysseus is there to save his son, and he goes all John Wick and kills all of the suitors that are in that temple. And him and his son set fire to the temple and go home. Odysseus is pretending that he's Sinon, and he says that he served nothing of Odysseus, only tales of the people of the sea who are violating Zeus's law, and that there is a fear of them causing the collapse of civilization. He says the plan is for Penelope to choose someone to marry, and when she does, Telemachus will only have to deal with one suitor, not a palace full. Penelope reminds Telemachus that she's been sitting on the throne for 20 years. It hasn't been empty, but because this boy's got bristles on his chin, it means nothing. Odysseus comes to the palace, and outside he finds his dog Argus laying on a dung pile. He was put there by Antinous, who said he will have to stay there from now on. Odysseus is reunited with the dog that he saved and then raised from a puppy. And Argus, who has only been staying alive and holding on to see his master again, wags his tail, whines, and dies as his master strokes him. This reveals to Telemachus that the beggar is actually Odysseus, his father. It is the saddest scene in the whole film, and it had me quietly ugly crying, as I'm sure it did anyone who has ever lost a pet family member. However you lost them, it just never leaves you, and I feel like this scene just captured it. Telemachus realizes that Daddy's home, and Odysseus is like, "Nope, I'm just a beggar." But when that Odysseus finally meets you, he's going to be really proud, wink wink. They head into the palace, and Odysseus hands Antinous the lot from Sinon, his shame. Antinous throws a chair at this beggar, which is really Odysseus, bravely about. My review of the Odyssey is that I love this film, but I have some thoughts, and I think people aren't going to be happy with me. First of all, I think it's brilliantly made. We're very lucky to have a filmmaker like Christopher Nolan doing these big movies practically. Where he shines through on most of his films is in those big set pieces, the locations, and things having this grand epic scale. Personally, I really love his earlier work that was a bit more low-key and focused on mystery and story. He's really good at that too. People sometimes forget that this guy is a master at a thrilling mystery, and it's not just all about these big films. I love his movies. Let me say that again before we go into the next bit. I love Christopher Nolan films. But where he doesn't always get it perfect for me is in his fight scenes, some of his writing, and his casting. And no, this has nothing to do with the diversity and all of that other nonsense and noise that people tried to create around this movie. That is just stupid. I just think he has a habit of casting quite bland actors that might be a little bit too famous for what he's doing. He has his favourites and he sticks by them while scattering in some odd choices and some interesting ones. I would love to see what a Christopher Nolan movie looks like with just really unknown but strong actors in. Tom Holland and Matt Damon aren't actors that disappear into the role. I can still see Matt Damon and Tom Holland. I like Matt Damon and I like Tom Holland, but that's just not what they do. Anne Hathaway and Robert Pattinson are for me the strongest actors in this film. And there are some really good actors in this. Mia Goth to me seemed miscast and wasted as Melantho. Agamemnon is awesome until Benny Safdie starts talking. Lupita Nyong'o did great with a small amount of time, and Charlize Theron is stunning and talented but forgettable as Calypso. That one I think is down to the writing. Himesh Patel, a 9 out of 10. The rest of it is amazing and some of the best stuff that you will see in a cinema for many years. But that's just me giving my opinion of the things that stop it from being perfect and from being one of the best movies ever. And I get it, the Matt Damon and the Tom Holland thing, as much as I like them, but not being able to disconnect and immerse completely is probably a me thing. I was moved multiple times to tears whilst watching this film, twice, and I'll definitely watch it again. It is a film that is worth watching, it's worth your time, and there will be people who love this and watch it probably once a year for many years to come. And as amazing as the Odyssey is, I have to say I do think that The Prestige and Interstellar are still better. Having said that, the Odyssey and Christopher Nolan are good for film and are good for cinema. But what did you think of the Odyssey? Who gave the best performance, and what is the best Christopher Nolan film? Let everyone know in a comment, because this is a movie club, like a book club, but for movies, so be sure to jump down there into the comments and subscribe to join the club. I've been MadMorph, and this has been the Odyssey Explained. If you'd like to listen to me read the Odyssey to you as a free audiobook, check out Down to Sleep on Spotify and everywhere you get podcasts. You can find the links to that and everything that I do, including my gaming channel, in the description or by going to madmorph.com. Until next time, check out the rest of the channel, click one of those videos on the screen for another movie explained with me, and I will see you the next time something amazing comes out. Until then, thank you and good night.